Today we're going to look at the best way to take down helicopters. In this video we will focus on Russian helicopters since they seem to be annoying a lot of War Thunder players. Starting off with the Ka-52, we have a pretty lightly armored helicopter. There's not much armor on it, there's some panels here on the bottom and protecting the cockpit. But the engine, the transmission, the oil cooling, and the shaft are all exposed to machine gun fire. If you wanted to take one of these out, the best place to shoot it would be right here. If you take out the engines, or if you take out one engine, it's probably going to go down, since these things are usually going to carry a full payload. And taking out the oil cooling, if you get lucky, or if you miss the engines, you might hit these, and it can eventually cause the helicopter to crash, but most likely people are going to pull back and try to fix things when they notice their oil pressure doing funky things. But you also have the propeller shaft, which is also very vulnerable, but it's a lot smaller of a target to hit than the transmission or the engine. So again, if you're shooting at a Ka-50, or any helicopter for that matter, you want to aim right here. The best place is, again, the engines, but you can shoot the pilots. They, however, have bulletproof armor and glass, and it's strategically placed so that if someone's shooting from the ground, it's going to most likely hit these bulletproof panels. Next up, we have an Mi-28. This is a pretty well-armored helicopter compared to the Ka-52. You'll notice the cockpit is just completely surrounded by bulletproof armor that's at least a centimeter thick. You're not going to get through this with small arms fire unless you're really lucky. So the best place to take it out would again be the engine, transmission, and oil cooling systems. But in this situation, the oil cooling is placed a little bit better. It's not exposed in the back, it's sandwiched between the engines. And the fuel tank's not really worth shooting, but you can shoot there. You want to aim again right here, where the propeller shaft, transmission, and two engines are. Now, I don't know how big of a payload this thing can carry. I don't know how much the engines can withstand after taking damage, but the same thing that applies with the Ka-52 applies here. Aim for the engine. If you take one out, it's going to hinder it a lot. It'll make it a lot easier for people to shoot it down with air-to-air missiles or even just regular machine gun fire. So, aim right here. Again, ignore the pilots. You're not going to really do anything to them. Next up, we have an Mi-35. This is an updated version of the slightly obsolete Mi-24. You'll notice it's a little bit different in terms of its layout of the engines, transmission. The engines are on the front, not on the sides. And unlike the Mi-28 and the Ka-52, they put a little bit of bulletproof armor here to protect the engine and the transmission respectively. However, it's not that much. It's only about a couple millimeters of steel. You have some armor-piercing ammunition in a larger caliber than an intermediate. You might be able to penetrate it and do some damage from a couple hundred meters away. Again, the best place to shoot would be right here for the engine, transmission, propeller shaft, and the oil cooling. With a full payload, and if it's carrying troops, it's not going to be able to fly far, if at all, on one engine. So aim for the engines. You can aim for the pilots, but they do have some bulletproof panels here protecting them. Remember, it's very easy for a lot of people to think this is the vulnerable part of the helicopter, but there's virtually nothing here except crew. You want to aim up here where the engines, the transmission, the propeller is. The top of the helicopter is the juicy part you want to shoot at if you want to take them down. Next, we have a Ka-50. This is a slightly more obsolete helicopter than the Ka-52 we saw earlier. You'll notice it's a very similar layout, but there's only one pilot this time. So if you want to take this thing out, you could aim for the pilot. Typically, the pilot and the gunner, or the co-pilot, they have controls that override each other, and so they can take care of the helicopter. They can fly it if one of them can't. But there's a lot of bulletproof armor and glass here protecting him, and he's also a very small target. Your best bet, again, would be to go for these engines, the transmission, the propeller shafts, and the oil cooling. So right here. Don't shoot here. Don't shoot here. Shooting back here is not going to do anything. Shooting down here isn't going to do much. You can shoot here, but you're aiming for a very small target that's very well protected. This is the slightly outdated helicopter that the Mi-35 is based on. The way you can tell is the Mi-24 has retractable landing gear. So when you see them flying, they're most likely not going to have their landing gear down. And it's just like the Mi-35 in terms of its placement of the engine, transmission, bulletproof armor, the pilot, the gunner, or co-pilot. It's very similar, but again, the landing gear is retractable. So a lot of Russians use this helicopter, but a lot of countries also use this helicopter too, so make sure you know who's flying this thing. But I'm pretty sure Russia doesn't use these anymore. I could be wrong. Again, shoot up here where the transmission, engine, oil cooling, and propeller shaft are. Don't shoot here. And shoot the tail. If you take out the tail rotor of this thing, it's not going to be flying for long. If you do aim at the tail, though, aim for the top part of the tail. That's where the control surfaces are for the tail rotor. So shoot the upper part of the Russian helicopters if you want to take them out. Next up, we have an Mi-8. This isn't in War Thunder yet, but a lot of people still use this helicopter, so it'll probably be added. So I'll just cover it just in case. It's based off of the Hind, so you have the two engines up here in the front. You have the transmission here and the oil back here. It's got the same exact tail, so if you want to shoot at it, aim for the top part of the tail where the control surfaces are. Aim for the engine, transmission right here. This is the juicy part of the helicopter. Don't want to shoot down here. Bullets are just going to go through one end and out the other. You can shoot the pilots. Doesn't look like there's going to be much armor there, but I don't know for sure. So aim for this part, and if you want to shoot its tail, you can, but you probably won't do much to it. So shoot here, and you may cut off the control surfaces. Lastly, we have a Kamov Ka-29 or K-29. This is a naval helicopter, so it's probably not going to be used that much, but it still can be used. It is like the K-50 and K-52 with the two propeller shafts. It has two engines on the side here. The oil cooling is in the middle with two pilots. There's not very much armor on this helicopter. But again, the juicy part of the helicopter is right here in the propeller shaft. Aim here and here. You can also aim back here. You'll hit the transmission and maybe the oil cooling, but that's it. Don't aim for the tail. There's no point. Don't aim down here. Can't shoot at the pilots. But the best way to do it, take out the helicopter, would be right up here. Hopefully this video can help someone out. Dealing with Russian helicopters is very annoying, and I can only imagine how annoying it is for those who have to deal with them on a daily basis. So y'all take care now.